He was an active, fun-loving little boy that loved to play with soldiers. And in fact, his father, as he grew into his teens, would go out. They had all the combat regalia, and they would go out and play soldiers in the backyard. And he seemed very good up until a certain point, around 16, I believe, that he just couldn't cope with life. He went for some medical treatment, and he was on antidepressants. And before he took his own life, he had been accepted at Homewood, an institution in Guelph that specializes in depression and anxiety, drug addiction, eating disorders, and he had just got a bed there. But unfortunately, on the day of his birthday, they had celebrated. He had just found out he had this bed, and the next morning, his mom found him in the basement, and he had hung himself.
Yeah, it was at work, Christmas lunch. My boss was up giving a little toast, had a wine and steak, and it was all great. And my phone rang, and I had it on vibrate, and rang again. Just kept clicking it off, and I could see it was my mom. And after like the fourth ring, I figured, oh, I better answer this. Something's going on, and I'll never forget that phone call. She found him, and she called me, and it was just, 1 minute you're sitting there having Christmas lunch with your colleagues and having a great time, and the next minute your mom's screaming into the phone that your father's just killed himself.
She was extremely bright. She was an Ontario Scholar. I believe she won an award for being an Ontario Scholar, and she had straight A's without ever trying. She was an avid reader. She could pick up a book and read it in an afternoon. We were 16 months apart to the day, and yeah, we were best friends. We hung out all the time. The night before my sister took her life, she had called me, and she was all excited because she loved the Ottawa Senators, and she was all excited because they had won the game, and I was actually out at a party, and she was at home alone watching the game. And the conversation, not that it ended badly, but I didn't, it wasn't, obviously that was sort of my last time I talked to her. So I just wish I could have gone back to that time. It's not easy on both my parents. We have a family cottage, and he's built a garden that he calls Ali's Garden, and he spends hours in the weekend just turning the soil and making it look perfect. And I think that's his way of just being with her and being close to her.
So I called my mom, and she said she was in a meeting, she couldn't come get me. And I couldn't get a hold of my dad, so I just told my mom I'm gonna bus home. I proceeded to go into the kitchen, and I took 47 Tylenols. I remember my dad coming home and finding me in the basement, curled up on the couch. I remember my mom squeezing my hand on the way to the hospital, trying to keep me alive. And I remember waking up in the hospital bed.
For him to give us the wake-up call, to see your son in an emergency room with graphite coming out of his mouth after they pumped his stomach. The day at the hospital, it was chaotic in the waiting room because there was other kids. There was 3 kids from his school alone. It wasn't a pack, they didn't know about each other, but here's 3 kids from the same high school in that emergency room on that day. Not to mention the dozen other kids that were there. So it was almost like there's an epidemic. The bravest guy is my son, that he can stand up now amongst his peers, given all of the peer pressure that they suffer at this age, to say, I'm not broken. I've got a mental illness. I'm dealing with it. I'm doing something about it. I'm getting help. There's nothing wrong with that.
I made very big mistakes in my life. I've made terrible choices, and someone gave me a second chance.